Hey y'all, it's Cassie. So last week I posted a video about starting tomato seeds and some of y'all had a lot of questions in the comments, and so I figured I would come back today and answer some of those questions. A lot of you had questions about squash plants, so that is mainly what we are going to cover in today's video. First, I want to show y'all the tomatoes that we started last week. And of course there were some peppers, so you'll see like some of them didn't sprout. Those were older seeds, probably 2 to 3 year old seeds, so that was kind of expected. I only want 2 pepper plants anyway, so that's perfectly fine that I only got 2 started. Majority of our tomato seedlings sprouted, so I have removed the heat mats from my growing racks and I have lowered my lights to the top of my tomato plants and removed the humidity domes. So now I am just watering as these cells dry out, as to not keep the soil too moist, as it will cause dampening off. Like I said, I have lowered my lights so that they are just above my tomato plants to hopefully prevent them from getting leggy. Now, if your tomato plants do get leggy, it is not a huge deal because tomato plants can just be buried a little bit deeper once we remove them from these cells. We'll up pot them to a bigger cup. We'll bury them a little bit deeper if they got leggy, and they'll produce roots up those stems. So if you get leggy tomato starts, it's not a huge deal. Don't throw them away. They're still perfectly fine, and they'll be great in the garden anyway because they have that ability to produce roots up there. So let's talk a little bit about our frost dates this year. I had not looked when I made the tomato video of when our exact frost date is because I told y'all that I basically plan to plant around Easter because we always seem to get that last expected frost right before Easter, and Easter is in the middle of April this year. So when I looked up our last projected frost date, it is March 15th, meaning that we could have frost up until March 15th, and it could be 2 weeks before when our last frost is, or it could be 2 weeks after the March 15th frost date when our last frost is, which would be that Easter weekend. So pretty much a majority of the plants that we plant in our spring and summer garden here in Florida do not handle a frost. So it's very important that you watch those dates and you watch your weather for your area to make sure that you're not putting your plants out into your garden that would be damaged by one of those last frosts that we seem to always get right before Easter. Now, another way that you can prevent that, of course, is by having frost covers so that if we all of a sudden they say, oh my gosh, it's gonna frost tonight, you can go out and you can throw those frost covers on top of your plants. However, I like to keep mine inside under the grow lights until that last frost comes. That means sometimes you have pretty big plants before you go and put them out in your garden. But like I said, we will up pot these several times before they're ready to go out into the garden. Now, one thing that I do that is a little bit different than most is that I do not direct seed squash out in my garden. And that's perfectly fine if you do, and you can, but I'm gonna explain to you why I don't. I start all of my squash seeds inside under my grow lights in March. That way I get a head start on the squash bugs and the squash vine borers. That was one of the main questions in some of my videos, is how in the world do you deal with squash bugs and squash vine borers? And I posted a video last year that I will link in the comments as well so that y'all can check that out. I think starting early gives me a head start on when they start hatching. And so if they decide to invade my garden, if they decide to kill a plant, it is not that big of a deal, and I've already harvested most of my squash by the time they decide to show up. The 2 main ways that I prevent squash bugs in my garden is I take a cup of soapy water out with me to the garden every time that I go, and I just flick the little bugs into the cup of soapy water. My kids also have a little bug vacuum, so if they're out there with me, they have a little bug vacuum and they'll walk around and suck them up into the vacuum, and then we dump it into the cup of soapy water as well. That just kind of gives them something fun to do while they're out in the garden with. Again, it is not time to start squash seeds in North Central Florida. It is in South Florida, but in North Central Florida where we still have projected frost, it is not time to start your squash seeds. Again, I will start mine in March. I will actually start mine in solo cups because squash grow insanely fast. So just in case I have to keep them in those solo cups for 3 to 4 weeks before I can plant them out in my garden, they have plenty of room to grow in those solo cups. So before we talk about which squash varieties I grow in my garden, let's talk about my seed case. It is actually a photo storage case, and I get mine at Michael's. They do have a 2-pack on Amazon, and I think it roughly comes out to the same price that they are at Michael's. Do not buy these unless they are on sale at Michael's. They seem really expensive, but Michael's puts them at 50% off. It is just like a big storage case, and then it has all of these little ones in here, and I used a label machine to put labels on these, and I will link it in the comments as well. My stickers came from Amazon. They were just a pack of vegetable stickers that I thought were really cute. Okay, so I think that was another one of the most asked questions, was about my seed storage. So I'm gonna say that there are 4 types of squash that you can grow in your spring summer garden, and some of those are scallop squash. I just have mine categorized by like the types that they are: zucchini, summer squash, and winter squash. And that always raises a lot of questions, because yes, we grow winter squash in our summer garden because they store long-term for the winter, because they have a thicker outer skin. So there are several types of squash that I have already grown before, and these do insanely well. I will grow the Waltham butternut squash, the typical spaghetti squash, and the delicata squash. And a new one that I'm gonna try this year that I got from Botanical Interest is this mashed potato squash. I just thought it looked really neat, and it would be something different to try. It's an acorn squash, so we'll see how well it does. I've never done this one before. All of these do need a trellis, and so that is something that you might want to think about before you decide to plant winter squash, because you will also be planting your cucumbers in this season as well. So you'll have to think about, do you have enough room to grow cucumbers and winter squash when you are deciding what you want to plant. These all grow up on a vine. You leave them on there until the outer skin gets nice and hard, and then you can pick them and put them in a cool, dry place, and they will last several months so that you have squash into fall and winter. The next type of squash that I grow in my summer garden are just your typical yellow squash. So I will grow the yellow crook neck, the yellow straight neck, and then this is a new one that I got from Botanical Interest this year, and it is a chiffon. And so I've never grown this one before. And so we're gonna try this one this year and see if we like it as well. The next variety of squash that I will grow in my summer garden are zucchini. The first one is a golden zucchini. I started growing these 2 years ago. They look like a squash, but they're yellow like a squash, but they are more of the texture and consistency of a zucchini. I really like these. I think these were a fun addition, and so I will continue growing these. Last year was my first year growing cocozelle, and I'm gonna try it again this year. It was not prolific at all. I think out of 3 plants, I got 2 cocozelle to ever produce. And I can't say it was my environment, because all of the other zucchini in the same area produced well. So we're gonna try these again. I give everything 2 years, just because the year before may have been a bad year. So I can't give you a positive review on these, but we're gonna try it again this year. I got the Green Machine zucchini from High Mowing. I've never grown this variety before. It's supposed to be a really good producer in our area, so we're gonna try this one this year as well. And then, of course, I plant your very basic Black Beauty zucchini. These are always super prolific. My granddaddy grew this variety. It's just your typical, when you think of a dark green zucchini, so these will always be a staple in my garden. Okay, this next set of squash are always so fun to grow. These are like your scallop squash, or just squash that I put in here that aren't like your typical squash that most people think about when they go to the grocery store to buy squash. Last year was my first year growing this variety. It is a lemon squash, and it's not technically a scallop squash, but it just didn't fit in any of my other containers, so that's where I ended up sticking it. It does actually grow viney, and it does have tendrils. We always call them tentacles around here, so if I ever accidentally call them tentacles in a video, we know they're called tendrils, but tentacles is a lot more fun when you have kids. These are insanely prolific, and these produced well into the heat of the summer. This variety is also vine borer resistant, meaning it could still get vine borers, but it is more likely to resist the vine borers. Y'all, this squash produced a ton. Now, they are only like the size of a lemon, and they do have heavier seeds in them than your typical squash, but insanely prolific. Tastes just like a regular like crookneck or something like that, but insanely prolific. Highly suggest, if you've never tried this variety, to try this variety. These came from Baker Creek. White scallop squash, insanely prolific. Vine like crazy all over the place. I don't think these had the tendrils, so like they wouldn't vine up a trellis, but you could probably prop them up a trellis to go up a trellis if you wanted to. Insanely prolific. My family does not enjoy eating these. They say that they have a thicker skin to them. It did not bother me, but I will not be growing these this year, I don't think, just because I had a lot of them and I had to end up giving most of them away because my family really didn't like eating them. But insanely prolific. If you're just looking for something that's super prolific, they're good to me. It's just got like a little bit of a tougher skin. Of course, then you have your yellow scalloped squash, patty pan squash. These are super prolific as well, not as prolific as the whites. They're just something really cool to grow. I will not be growing these again this year because, like I said, they have a thicker skin and my family just does not enjoy them. I don't think that I ever talked about this company the other day. If you are looking for a cheaper option for seeds and you get a lot, Dollar Seed is a great place to shop. They do not have the amount of varieties that most places have, so it's like you get what you get. Yellow squash, you get yellow squash seeds. Bell pepper, you get bell pepper seeds. So you can't like choose a specific variety, but every seed pack is $1, and then they do run sales occasionally where they will be cheaper than $1. So this is, if you're starting out and you're on a budget, this is a great place to go. I also have purchased seeds at the Dollar Tree. They're 4 packs for $1.25 now, I think. Or that might still be 4 packs for $1, but I think it's 4 packs for $1.25. All their price changes have me so confused. I am not against buying seeds at the Dollar Tree, so if that is the only place you can go, of course, go there as well. Another place that I didn't talk about the other day because they do not have a catalog, and y'all know I am partial to seed starting catalogs, is a place called Florida Seed. Again, their varieties are super limited, but the varieties are specific to Florida and they've always done insanely well for me. They germinate great, but because I can't get the funky varieties, I don't shop there very often anymore. So I hope that helps y'all plan a little bit more of y'all spring summer garden. I didn't want to wait and do this video when I was starting seeds because a lot of us are ordering our seeds now. So I'm hoping that if I do it now, then y'all have ordered your seeds and you're ready to plant your garden in March. Like I said, you can direct sow your seeds out into your garden. After that, fear of our last frost date has passed, but you can also start them inside, which is what I'm going to do. I love to get a head start on the bugs and the heat here in Florida, and I just think it helps me to have a more productive garden. If y'all have any questions, of course, drop them below. I would love for y'all to tell me what else that y'all need help with, and I will do my best to help y'all answer your questions. I've linked a video below about how I cared for my squash plants. I'm not a huge neem oil person, and I go into depth in that video, and I go a little bit more into depth about how I get rid of the squash bugs. So just let me know if y'all have more questions and I'd be happy to answer them or make another video. Until next time, I'll see y'all later.